So, you're moving to Ireland for your master's degree. That is huge. And along with all the excitement, I'm sure there's also a giant mountain of questions and things to figure out. In this explainer, we're going to take all that stress and turn it into a super clear, step-by-step checklist, so your arrival is as smooth as it can possibly be. Let's dive right in.
Does this sound familiar? Yeah. If you're feeling this right now, you are definitely not alone. Moving to a whole new country can feel like a total whirlwind of worries. Our goal today is to cut through that confusion and give you some real confidence.
And here's our game plan. First, we'll cover the absolute essentials you need to get sorted before you even step on the plane. Then we'll walk you through your first few days in Ireland, we'll tackle that all-important paperwork, and we'll finish up with some pro tips that are going to make settling in so much easier. Okay, first section. Before you board. And honestly, getting this part right is probably the single most important thing you can do for yourself. A little bit of planning now is going to save you a world of stress once you land.
So let's just get right to it. The number one priority, and I can't stress this enough, is accommodation. Finding a place to live in Ireland can be a serious challenge. You absolutely positively cannot just show up without a place to stay, even if it's just a temporary room for the first couple of weeks. This is non-negotiable.
So where do you even start looking? Well, the big websites like daft.ie are a great place to start. But don't underestimate the power of your community. Seriously, Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups for students or Indians in your city can be absolute gold mines for finding shared houses and getting trustworthy leads.
Now, a really important warning here. You have to be so careful about rental scams. They are out there. If you can, have a friend or a contact already in Ireland check out a place for you before you send a single cent. Just remember the rule. Verify, verify, and then verify again.
Okay, let's talk documents. Make sure these are in your carry-on bag, not your checked luggage, so you can easily grab them for immigration. You're going to need your passport with your visa, obviously, your official college admission letter, proof that you've paid your fees, and your full medical insurance policy.
And what about cash? Well, it's a good idea to have some euros on hand for those immediate expenses, before you get a bank account set up. We'd recommend somewhere between 500 and 1,000 euros. That'll cover things like a taxi, your first grocery trip, that kind of stuff. For the rest of your money, a secure Forex card is definitely the way to go.
All right, you did it. You've landed and you've made it to your new place. So, now what? Well, the next 72 hours are pretty critical for getting all your foundational stuff sorted. Let's walk through it.
Your very first stop has to be your college's welcome meeting. This is the key that unlocks everything else, because this is where you get your official college letter and your student ID card. And trust me, you're going to need these two things for pretty much everything else we're about to talk about.
Speaking of saving money, as soon as you have that college ID, get a student leap card. I mean, just look at the difference here. Paying for a bus with cash is €2.60, but with your student leap card, that same trip is just €1. It's a no-brainer, and those savings add up incredibly fast. Okay, now that you've got your college letter and ID in hand, you're ready to tackle the next big step, the essential paperwork. This is where we get into what I call the big three: your bank account, your residence permit, and your public service number.
Opening a bank account is actually pretty straightforward. The big banks like Bank of Ireland and AIB are solid choices, and a lot of them now let you do the verification online, which is super convenient. All you'll need is your passport and, you guessed it, that all-important college letter. Digital banks like Revolut are also a really popular and fast option.
Next up is probably the most important card you'll get in Ireland. You're going to hear this term a lot. So what exactly is an IRP card?
The IRP, or Irish Residence Permit, is basically your official registration with immigration. Think of it as your main ID card while you're in the country. And the deadline here is critical. You have to apply for it within 90 days of arriving. Don't put this one off.
So how do you get it? It's a three-step process. First, you call to book an appointment. Then you gather all your documents. And finally, you go to the appointment and pay the fee. A little tip, those appointment slots can fill up really fast, especially at the start of a semester. So call to book it as soon as you have your college letter.
One thing you absolutely need to budget for is the fee. The IRP application costs €300, and you'll pay that by card when you go to your appointment. And just so you know, this isn't a one-time thing. You have to pay it every time you renew your permit.
All right, on to the next one, the PPSN. Now, if you're planning to work part-time while you study, this one is non-negotiable. So what is it?
Think of the PPSN as being kind of like your PAN card in India. It's your unique ID number for all public services, but most importantly, for employment and taxes. If you work without one, you get hit with a really high emergency tax rate, and nobody wants that.
You apply for your PPSN online, which is nice and easy, but as you can see from the timeline, you do have to be a little patient. It usually takes about 3 to 4 weeks for the number to arrive in the mail, so it's a good idea to apply for it nice and early.
So with all that major paperwork out of the way, we can finally move on to our last section, some quick pro tips that are just going to make your day-to-day life that much easier. Let's talk about your phone. Here's a great little tip. Keep your SIM from back home active on a really cheap plan. Why? Because you'll still need it to get those important one-time passwords from your bank. Then, as soon as you arrive, just grab a free local SIM card. Your college might even give you one. Providers like 48 or Tesco Mobile have really good prepaid deals.
Now, we haven't made a huge packing list here because, honestly, that could be a whole explainer by itself. But a really good rule of thumb is to pack your clothes and your electronics, but plan on buying most of your household stuff, like bedding and kitchen things, when you get to Ireland. It'll just save you a ton of luggage space and money.
And that's it. I know it might seem like a lot of steps, but if you just tackle them in this order, it turns a really stressful process into something totally manageable. And once all the logistics are sorted, you're finally free to focus on the real adventure. So, we'll leave you with this question. What part of your new life in Ireland are you most excited to start?